As Gigi mentioned, I'm going to split the presentation into two parts. I'm going to start with Lisbon and then talk about the Azores, and we'll have our little 5-10 minute break in the middle to have some refreshments and bathroom break or whatever. September 2023, so a year ago, we were invited to a family wedding in England, and we decided while we were there to take a European trip. We'd never been to Lisbon, but my daughter spent her honeymoon in the Azores and showed us photographs, and it looked so beautiful that we decided we would come back via the Azores, and there are direct flights to Boston, and it's a shorter trip, so that worked out really well. This is a map showing the United States on the left and Portugal and Spain on the right, and you can see the red mark represents the Azores. You can see how far into the Atlantic they actually are. So we started in Lisbon. This map is Portugal, and Lisbon is about 2/3 of the way down on the coast, and you can see a big inlet there, which is the Tagus River. Lisbon is the capital of Portugal. And this is the view we woke up to on our first morning in Portugal from our hotel room. And it gives you some idea of how hilly Lisbon is. This was totally unexpected. I hadn't done my research. It's famous for, they say 7 hills, but apparently there's actually 8. And so a lot of the buildings, the land is terraced, and the terraces rise from sea level at the River Tagus up to the mountains of Sintra. This is King Pedro IV Square in Lisbon. It's known as Rocio Square. It has twin fountains, so there was another one exactly the same as this. And a lot of the city's famous restaurants and museums and shops are set around this square. This is also Rocio Square, and on the top of the monument is King Pedro IV. He was the King of Portugal, and he was also the first Emperor of Brazil. And you'll notice the marble pavements, which were everywhere. Pavement to me is what you call sidewalk. But also the streets were made of marble tiles. And when they had to do repairs, that was a lot of work. A whole team of people there putting these pieces in bit by bit. This is a narrow pedestrianised street. You can see there's a gutter down the middle to drain rainwater. And at the end, you'll see an elevator. Because the town is built on so many hills, there were various elevators arranged throughout the city. And there were also some funiculars, so that you didn't have to necessarily do the climbing. Some of them you paid, some of them were free. And there were lots of modes of transport, but very common in Lisbon was the tram. And you can see there the tram lines running down the edge of the street. Trams, taxis, buses, motor scooters. And here's another view of the marble plaza in this case, leading to an archway. This is the Rua Augusta Arch, and it was built to commemorate the reconstruction of Lisbon after this massive earthquake, which was in 1755, which devastated the city. And this is a closer-up view of the arch, which is really beautiful. There's 6 pillars, and then there's historical figures over it, a clock on this side, and there's actually some figures on the top, but because of the angle that I took the photo, you can't actually see them. So even in September, there were some trees blooming, and you'll notice in this presentation, there's quite a lot of attention to food. And this meeting place was in a plaza where this tree was for our foodie tour. When I booked this vacation, it was after COVID, And because of COVID, it was the first time I ever used anybody to book the trip for us. Usually I put all the pieces together myself, but I was scared that if the trip didn't run for any reason, we got sick, I'd have to cancel all these different bits and pieces. So I figured I would use a company to do this. And I found a company in Needham called Quest Travel, which only deals with Portugal and the Azores. And they were really good and very reasonable. In fact, I don't think I could have done it any cheaper myself. And this is some of the architecture in the square where we met for the foodie tour. Just beautiful colours and textures and just so different.
Is that flat optical illusion or is that actually stone sticking out?
It is actually optical illusion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tile or stones?
It's probably tile because tile was big in Portugal, but I don't remember. So the foodie tour started with dry cured ham that they call presunto and a local cheese and a glass of either white or red port to go with it. And this was like 11 in the morning.
Breakfast.
What is meat or red?
Yes, it's like a ham.
I understand.
Another course, and I didn't take photos of all the courses, there were about 7 different ones, and each one was at a different place. This was a sardine on toast with white wine, which sounds very pedestrian, but in fact it was absolutely delicious.
Big sardine.
Yeah, and this plate was, it had caviar on it and some white fish, and the cake underneath was a rice and salt cod cake. Salt cod is very popular in Portugal. It's called bacalhau. And we really enjoyed our foodie tour. This is just a view of Lisbon showing again the hills and how the buildings are, you know, perched one above the other. We did a lot of walking when we were in Lisbon, and we found a really high viewpoint, a park which had a beer garden in it, which was a plus. And that overlooked the main station in Lisbon, which is all the big roof you can see there. And then beyond you can see the Tagus River, which is very wide. It's much bigger than I expected.
Near the mountains, buildings, even on the mountain.
Right. Now, we requested, when we booked this trip, they had set itineraries, which you could chop and change, and they were also willing to book trips for us. So we booked the foodie tour. One of the other things I wanted to do, because I'd heard about it, was visit the Peña Palace at Sintra.
Nice, beautiful.
Sintra is a resort on the coast where the rich people took their vacations, and there are several palaces there. This particular one is a 19th century romanticist castle. It's on a hilltop overlooking Sintra. In the Middle Ages, there used to be a chapel there, and in the 16th century, there was a monastery. But in the earthquake, everything got razed to the ground. So King Ferdinand II bought the land in the 1830s, and he commissioned the building of this palace in 1842. And it's a mixture of architecture styles. Mm-hmm. It's Gothic, Renaissance, and Moorish. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Let me go back to that.
Rest there?
And
Rich people rest inside?
Sorry?
Rest in this castle?
You can't stay in it, no. No.
Not now.
It's just, in fact, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now.
It's good, because don't break.
Right, so you can go and visit it. And the different parts of the castle are coloured in different colours.
It's on the hill.
It's high up on the hill.
Excellent.
So to get to it, you walk through the Peña Park. And it's quite a long trek up the hill, but there are shuttles for people who need help to get up there. And the park has been deliberately planted with lakes and summer houses and exotic gardens and things. So this is a view right at the bottom of the park. This was starting our journey. This was just an interesting tree that we saw on the way up. And this was a little gazebo which had wrought iron gates in the windows, but one of them was open. You could go in and there was just a simple wooden bench around the circumference so that you could sit and just relax in the shade.
Was it very hot?
It was warm. It wasn't very hot. It was pleasant. Now, I'm not a plant person. I like to take pictures of them, but I don't identify them. I've no idea what this is, but it was very cool because it looked like a flower, but it was just parts of the leaves that were coloured red.
It's nice, beautiful.
Yeah. This is one of the gateways in the palace. You can see the crowds lined up, huge lines, even in mid-September. And we were glad we had booked because we had a skip the line tour. And so we were able to go past all these people and get inside. This is part of the castle, which was painted a red colour. This was the view from the top. You could see for miles.
It's from castle,
From the top of the castle, yeah. And there were some beautiful arches you could pose against, and I have a lot of pictures of those, but I didn't want to have you looking at pictures of me and my husband posing in front of the arches. So I took those out.
Nice.
Another very ornate gate and some scary looking gremlin staring down at us. But it was incredible, the detail of the stonework. And that's a view showing the tricolour, the gold and the red and the regular stone. Oops, didn't mean to do that. But you can see the ramparts very high and built into this rock. I mean, it was an incredible feat. I don't know how long it took to build, but I shouldn't imagine it was done overnight. Inside, just a couple of rooms were set up as they would have been in the palace. This was a dining room with a table setting for dinner. And look at the ceiling of the room.
It's metal or wood on top.
I think it was plaster, actually. This is another dome inside. This beautiful blue, cobalt blue colour, which I love.
A nice color.
Yeah, and again the work on the walls there, and then these antlers and various heads around. So another trip we took was we requested to go sailing on the Tagus River, and in order to do that we had to go down to Belém to get the boat, and we didn't know much about Belém, but it's a district of Lisbon to the west of the city, so it's part of Lisbon, but it's called the Museum District because this is where all the museums, or most of the museums, are housed. And this building was originally a monastery. It was called the Jeronimos Monastery, and it houses the Maritime and the Archaeology Museums. And there was huge queues to get in, another place that you need to book. And we didn't.
It's stones everywhere.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
Now, the other thing that we'd heard about in Belém, well, let me back up a little. In our hotel in Lisbon, in the reception area, there was a tray of these little, very small Portuguese custard tarts called pastéis de nata, which were delicious. And every time I passed through the reception, going in or going out, it was just a mouthful. But we read that the original recipe came from the monastery in Belém. So we weren't sure about that. But when I was researching Belém, it said that there was a pasteleria in Belém which had the claim to the recipe, and they were called Pastéis de Belém. So we had to go there. And there's a picture of our pastéis de Belém with a cup of espresso. They sprinkled them there with powdered sugar. You could have powdered sugar or cinnamon. I actually prefer them plain. but they were very good, but they actually weren't as tasty as the hotel ones. And when I came back, I Googled Portuguese bakeries and found that there's one in Hudson and one in Falmouth. And so I have sampled the pastéis de nata from both of those bakeries, and that's what I've brought for a snack today. But they don't make them bite-size over here. I like everything in America. They're bigger and better. Well, the bigger anyway. So I've cut them in half. So hopefully there's enough for everybody, if my husband didn't eat too many. Inside the cafe, which we had to queue to get into, this was a tile picture on the wall of something that happened at Belém. I'm not really sure what. There wasn't an inscription, but I just thought it was cool showing the tile work. And this is another view of the monastery, but taken from towards the ocean. In front of the monastery, there's these huge fountains and beautiful gardens. But I thought the clouds were just incredible. The skies when we were there were just magnificent.
Nice picture. Oh.
So on the edge of the river here is the Monument to the Discoveries. And this was inaugurated in 1960 to commemorate the 500th anniversary of Henry the Navigator. Yeah, he was Prince Henry. It's shaped like the prow of a ship, and Prince Henry's right at the front. And then each side of him, there's 16 famous figures, famous for exploration. And if you look at the guy in the picture on the right, you can see the size of this, the scale of it. I mean, he's only 2 blocks up. So this thing was massive. And I found out after the fact, you can actually climb to the top for a view, which I wish I'd known at the time. I just was obsessed with these pavements, these sidewalks. I loved them, and they kind of made you dizzy looking at them, sort of, yeah.
Does it make you
Like waves.
Does it make you dizzy?
A little bit, a little bit.
Oh, it would.
And the other thing is that when they're wet, they're very slippery. But even when they're dry, you kind of slide on them. You have to be careful. So this was sailing on the Tagus River. Now, it was not a small dinghy with us sailing. This was an excursion with maybe 20 people on a sailboat. And one of the landmarks was this bridge. And this bridge is called the 25th of April Bridge, which seems like a strange name. It's a suspension bridge. It has, these days, 4 lanes of cars, and underneath it has 2 railroad tracks. It was opened in 1966 as the Salazar Bridge. That was its name. It was named after the Prime Minister, and he actually ordered it to be built. But on April 25th, 1974, there was a revolution and his government was overthrown. And so pretty quickly after that, they changed the name of the bridge. And it's painted the exact same colour as the Golden Gate Bridge. So United States Inc. built this bridge, and it's similar to the San Francisco Bay Bridge. It connects Lisbon to a municipality called Almada. And there you can see the Christ the King statue. There is a sanctuary there. It's a Catholic monument, and it's inspired by the Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil. I thought it was cool how on the bottom of the bridge supports they painted dolphins. Thank you.
Yeah, it's famous statue because very huge.
Yes, yeah. This is looking at the city of Lisbon from the water. Yeah, the clouds were just incredible. And that's on the left is the monument to the Discovery is seen from the water, and you can see Prince Henry the Navigator at the front. He's the biggest statue by far.
Different side.
Yeah.
It's nice.
And then the other photo is my quirkiness. We were going through the docks, and there was rows and rows of these, and they looked like giraffes to me. So
Yeah.
I just had to take a picture of the
nice.
giraffe in Lisbon.
Certainly does, yes.
And this is the final Lisbon photo, and it was just cool to me to see the different architecture, the colours, the terracotta tiles, the different shapes of the windows, and again seeing all the hills in Lisbon.
It's old architecture.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to the Azores, but I'm going to suggest a 10-minute break, and I'll go and get the snacks. And if people need to leave for a couple of minutes, that's fine. So I'll be back shortly. Well, I don't know why I have this picture. My husband and I combined pictures. All the pictures were taken on our phones, by the way. And he took a picture of this cookie in the Azores for some reason. So I thought, well, that's a good one for the cookie break. So, so here are the Azores. There are 9 islands, and they're sort of in 3 groups. There's the 2 biggest islands are Sao Miguel on the right and Terceira, which is the next one over. And those are the 2 that we visited. This company that we went with allows you to plan your trip to visit any or all of the islands. And I decided that we'd do half a week on each island rather than island hop and have, you know, a night here, a night there. Our daughter visited 4 of them. And so, and they're all very different. Very different. So they're volcanic islands. There are direct flights from Boston to Terceira and Sao Miguel. I think the Terceira one might be seasonal, but Sao Miguel is all year. And these islands were discovered in 1400 by Portuguese explorers. And in the 16th and 17th centuries, they were used as stopovers between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. In the 19th century, there was a big wave of emigration from the Azores to the United States and to Canada. And in the 20th century, they were a strategic military and allied naval and air base. And all of the islands have stunning natural beauty, but they're all very different. So we started on the island of Sao Miguel, and we stayed in the capital, which is called Ponta Delgada. The islands are not huge, and again, we requested certain things, certain trips on each island. So on Sao Miguel, our first day there, we did a full-day island tour in a minibus with just 4 other people. So it was really personalised, and we could stop places as long as we wanted.
There, or not?
People live there. Oh yeah, people live there. Very green. Now these flowers are, I believe, Amaryllis belladonna, but in the Azores they are called girls back to school because they always bloom in September when the kids are going back to school, and so the name that they have for them means girls back to school. And the other thing that's very prevalent on the Azores is hydrangeas. And we were at the very end of the season for them. So I had to hunt to find a purple one. Most of them were past their best. But some roads were there was just hedges of azaleas all the way along. I mean, it must look incredible in the season.
Huge.
And there's a close-up. Laura, do you know what this flower is on the right?
Glory.
Morning Glory. I knew the name, but I couldn't recall it.
Gorgeous.
This was a warm day, but it was very overcast, and these clouds looked threatening, but I don't think it rained. One of the things that we visited on the day trip was a tea plantation. It's the oldest tea factory in Europe, still in operation. From 1883. It's a family business, and they specialise in green and black teas. They're all organic, and we could taste the teas while we were there. We could buy them if you wanted, but it was quite interesting to see a tea plantation. And that's a view from the plantation looking over the tea plants over to the ocean. I mean, the scenery was just stunning. And this is just a patchwork of land viewed from the roadside. We just stopped in a pull-in as we were travelling around with the mountains in the background. And we went to a place called Furnas, where there are geysers and hot springs. And if you look down to the lake, which is a volcanic crater that's filled in, on the right, or on the left, you'll see a parking lot. And on the right, the other sandy coloured area is where they make use of these hot springs for cooking.
Yeah, people swimming there?
No. It's too hot. It's really hot. This is the water, the lake at Furnas, which is beautiful. And this is a closer view now of the hot springs. So you can see there's some wooden boardwalks there that you could walk along, but there was danger signs everywhere warning you not to leave the path, not to go into the hot spring area. And that's another couple of views.
How big is this island?
Excuse me?
How big is this island?
Oh,
20 miles long?
Longer.
you know, I've really no idea. Isn't that awful?
Wasn't it like an hour from one end to the other?
It's not far.
Sao Miguel.
Yeah, it's not far. So back to the hot springs. You see this mound in the right-hand picture. That is a cooking area. And these mounds cover holes that are lined with concrete that go into the earth, and they can load up to 2 or 3 cast iron pots into each hole and cook an entire meal in this pot for several hours or overnight. And the restaurants all have their own designated areas, and they have little flags up with their names on. And this is the meal that comes out of the pot. So the things I could identify were sausage, chicken, potato, cabbage and onion. It was a very carb and protein meal. Cabbage was one of the few vegetables we saw. The thing that really shocked me about the Azores, it seemed like beautiful, fertile land for growing, but no salads or vegetables on the menus. It was all carbs and proteins, and I was desperate for salad.
The cabbage
and
inside
vegetables.
meat, yes?
It looks like sauerkraut.
Like
It
ground
does.
cabbage
Stuffed
inside
cabbage?
meat. Not?
I don't think so. No, I think it was just all shoved in the pot together. When I read up about this stew, which has a special name, it's called cocido de Furnas. They said it also included offal and blood and all sorts of things. They didn't tell us that. I'm sure for the tourists they probably didn't do that either. But we did eat this meal, and it was, bearable. This was a local church in Furnas, which I just liked because of the colour against the blue sky and the architecture. And
What
this
kind of religion is there?
Catholic.
Catholic?
probably, yeah. Local tree,
Oh, nice.
just interesting.
Beautiful.
This was a stop to look at an island called Isla Villa Franco de Campo, and this will feature later on because we actually go snorkeling there. But it was just cool to see. In Ponta Delgado, the capital, we were walking around in the evening looking for a restaurant, and I just loved this pavement with the stars in it and this church lit up at night.
So pretty.
And anyone know what these are? We ate them.
Limpets.
Limpets, yes. Limpets. Those are limpets. My husband will eat anything. And I eat mussels, so these didn't look too bad. So I did try them and they were fine.
What inside? In the door? What inside?
It's the limpet.
A limpet, it's like a sea creature that lives on a
Like a
rock,
barnacle?
like a barnacle, yeah,
Or a mussel.
yeah. We also visited a pineapple plantation, and this was on San Miguel. It's been going for more than 100 years. It's like a living museum. They have all stages of pineapple production, from planting and growing through a shop that sells everything you can possibly do with pineapple, including candles. I was like, yeah, very odd. They were grown in greenhouses, and the greenhouses were painted white to protect them from the direct sunlight. And then another thing I always do on trips is take photos of laundry. I love seeing a line full of clothes, and so this was just, you know, I noticed it in passing and I took a picture.
It's quickly dry because hot air.
Yes, yeah. This was a picture of the place that inspired my trip to the Azores. When my daughter showed me her honeymoon pictures, she showed me this picture and I just said, I have to go there. It was partly the hydrangeas, but it was partly the lake. This is Sete Cidades, and it's famous because it has this lake which looks green in one half and blue in the other. You can see the back bit is the bit that looks blue.
Somebody swimming there?
No.
No?
The scenery was absolutely stunning. And you could drive all around. The roads were immaculate. It was like they'd just been built. Maybe they had, but they were pristine condition roads, tarmac roads.
No winter.
Yeah, maybe it's that.
No potholes.
4 seasons summer.
And these are just some views as we were driving around. Again, look at the clouds. I just thought that was really cool.
What month was this?
September. Last September, a year ago. And these are some sort of, we did ask, and there's some sort of like burial mounds or something. Now, this is going back to the Isla Villafranco de Campo. We went on a boat trip out to this island and to go snorkeling. And part of the island, which you couldn't see in the other picture, is this big rock tower. It was used by Red Bull, the energy drink people, for a cliff diving competition. Apparently they do it every year and they go to different places. And part of the task of the divers was to climb the rock and then to dive off the top. I mean, I just could not imagine it. It was horrendous.
It's nature did it, these stones. It's from nature.
Yes, oh yeah, it's all natural, yeah. And here's a couple more views. And here you can see an inlet going from the open ocean into a lagoon in the center of the island sort of thing. And we had to jump off the boat and we had to swim through that island, but it was the tide was coming the other way. So you had to be very careful. A couple of people got into difficulties and had to get back on the boat.
This is across this
On the
hole.
right.
Yeah.
In
On the right,
mountain.
on the right. It's, yes, an island, but it comes round in a horseshoe sort of shape. Then on the way back, I'd read about this restaurant with great food, so I made a reservation, and as we sat there, it got darker and darker, and this is just the view from our dining table, which I thought was cool. And our last morning in Ponta Delgada, we woke up, we were overlooking the ocean, and there was an inland lagoon here that we swam in. And there was this big pier with shops and things. I had no idea that cruise boats stopped here. When we woke up in the morning and I opened the blinds, this is what I saw. And I was just like, I was kind of horrified. I was, thank goodness we were getting out of town that day because I couldn't imagine all those people coming into town.
It's from Boston, a lot of trips go different way.
Yeah.
And the north on the everywhere go this.
So not my cup of tea. So we escaped. We flew now to Terceira. And this was our hotel at Terceira. This was the hotel gardens, looking to the pool, looking to the ocean beyond. The ocean was too dangerous to swim in here. And the pool was pretty cool, but we were in it every day.
Big waves or crocodiles?
Big waves and rocks. Yeah. So that was the pool. There was a wedding while we were there in the garden, so we got a bird's eye view of that. That was fun. And the weather wasn't great on Terceira. It was raining, but we went exploring, and there were some interesting buildings. Again, you see the tile pavements and roads. This was a cool building that was actually had been abandoned, but they blocked up the windows, and then various artists had done pictures in the windows. So I thought that was really cool. And then,
Oh dear.
Chicken.
yeah, across from our hotel, there was a mountain called Monte Brasil, and we took an Uber up the mountain. There were no walking paths. It was just a road up. So we took an Uber to go up Monte Brasil. And on the top, there was these chickens running about. It was so incongruous. I just thought I'd take a picture. And that's looking back at the town, Angro de Heroísimo, which is the capital. And the blue building on the right there is the one that I had a close-up of a minute ago. And that's the harbour beach. Then we took another trip up to the north of the island to a place called Biscoitos that was famous for natural swimming holes. So we thought we'd investigate. On the way, we passed a vineyard where all the walls of the vineyard were built of larval rocks. And you couldn't imagine how anything could grow, but it did. And I'm going to have a problem in a minute because there's another video. The colours are just stunning. The blues and the watercolours and the sky colours.
You could have that made into a jigsaw puzzle.
You could, Laura, and I'd need you to help me with it. The other place we visited was Algar de Carvalho, which is, I mean, we'd call it a cave, but it's actually an ancient lava tube from a it's a volcanic vent, basically. And it was right in the centre of the island, and it's about 300 feet deep. So we went down into it, and then the second photo is looking up from the inside.
It's a cold volcano.
Yeah,
That climb must have been hard.
and those are photos inside. On the way back, we stopped at a couple of places, and I saw this statue, and I have researched and can't find what it is, and I've magnified the plaque, but I can't make out what it says. So some unknown statue. I think it might be Mother Teresa of Avila.
And
Yes.
if you lens it, it'll tell you what it is.
Google Lens.
Google Lens.
What, now, while I'm on it, you mean? Or at home?
Either way.
I don't
well,
want to.
I'd probably do it at home.
I would do it at home, yeah. This is some unknown plant that just reminded me of grapes, but it was kind of cool.
You can Google that too.
Yeah.
Find out.
Just showing the narrow streets in Terceira. This was on our way to the laundromat. We didn't want to pay hotel prices, and we figured we'd find a laundromat near a bar and occupy ourselves while the washing was being done. One of our favourite things to do when we go anywhere is go to botanic gardens. And there was a big botanic garden in Angro de Heroísimo, and it was all the way up the hill with a monument on top. And this is one of the pools on the way up the hill. This is a view from the top of the hill and a closer up view of that church. Just a house that was actually right next to wall of the Botanic Garden. And of course, some laundry. And these are just a couple of views from the top looking back over the capital. And that's the harbour down there where the blue church is. And that's Monte Brasil, the mountain that we went up where the chickens were. And then this is our last night now. We'd read about a really good fish restaurant in a village called San Mateus, which was west of Angra. And so we got an Uber out to this village, made a reservation. And this is where my husband had barnacles.
Oh, wow. Gooseneck.
They're very expensive because the divers have to go and, you know, hack them off the rocks. But he did want to try it. I didn't. And this is the final shot of the presentation. That's just looking back at the restaurant, which is the building that's lit up. That's the building where he had his barnacle.
Did you like it?
He loved it. He would say he loved it even if he didn't, I think. Yeah. But anyway, that's the final slide of the presentation. So, but I would encourage anybody who's interested to go. It's 4-hour flight from here. It's just a wonderful location. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Just